Hello everyone, in this video we're going to start talking about the overview of metabolism. We'll just call it the intro to metabolism. And first off I want to just start out with a couple definitions. So metabolism can be defined as all of the collective reactions occurring in a given cell or a given organism at any one time. And it's been estimated that in a single cell in our bodies that number of reactions could be anywhere between 10 to 50,000 different reactions all happening at the same time inside the same space. So in our complete bodies, the number of reactions could be on the hundreds of thousands of different types of reactions, all occurring at the same time, all being regulated in some way and coordinated. So it's really kind of a fascinating field of study. We can break metabolism down into two main types of metabolism. First is what's called catabolism, and this is where large molecules are broken down to small molecules. And in general, catabolic processes or catabolism produce energy. So in general, when you break down large molecules into smaller pieces, those types of reactions in metabolism are going to produce energy, and our cells and our body can then harness that energy and use it for various purposes in the cell. Conversely, anabolism, this is where small molecules are put together to form large molecules. And these types of reactions require energy. Okay, so catabolism versus anabolism are important distinctions. In our first main part of the class, we're going to be talking primarily about the catabolic processes, so things like glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, so how are sugars broken down. We also may get to discussion of maybe how fatty acids are broken down or fats to generate energy. But we'll also switch gears and talk a little bit about some of the anabolic processes. So how is glucose synthesized from smaller precursors, or how is glycogen made? So just keep in mind that these processes are like this. So one other thing I'll put on sort of a diagram here. If I were to sort of draw an energy diagram like this, and envision on this diagram I have a hill. Okay, so here's a hill, right? And if I need to go down the hill, so if I have some large biomolecule and I go down this hill to make small little rubble here at the end, so I have to take the boulder and roll it down the hill, it cracks up, that process is releasing potential energy. Okay, so when you go in a downhill process like this, those are catabolic reactions. Okay, and they're going to release energy. Okay, so that's a downhill energetic process, going sort of in this downhill direction. Conversely, if I want to take all of these small pieces of rubble, let's say, or small molecules, and convert them in the opposite direction, going up the hill towards my larger molecule here, that's going to require energy. I'm going to have to piece those pieces together, put energy into this system. And so these types of processes would be called anabolic. And these require energy. To go up a hill, you'd require energy. So this sort of analogy is sometimes useful just to keep in mind when we're talking about a downhill energetic process like catabolism or an uphill energetic process like anabolism. So continuing on our intro to metabolism, I just want to sort of highlight the 4 stages of catabolism, or the breakdown of biomolecules. So envision you've just eaten something, college students' favorite food, pizza, let's say. It's got all the main food ingredients, right? It's got your dairy section, it's got the cheese, so it's got the lipids and things in there. It's got vegetable in there, like obviously the sauce. It's got carbohydrates in the crust. So it's got everything you would want. Ideal college food, right? So let's envision now you put that in your mouth, and you now are going to start the first phase, which is digestion. So we're going to start breaking down the large biomolecule called pizza, and we'll be breaking all of those larger biomolecules, things like the carbohydrates, the lipids, the proteins, into their individual building blocks. So if we focus just on the carbohydrates, during digestion, what's happening is these large polymeric sugars, the starches, things like that, are starting to be broken down into individual smaller sugars, such as glucose. And those are then absorbed as the food passes through our digestive system. Primarily, absorption occurs in the small intestine. And then those small biomolecules, the sugars, are then going to be distributed throughout the body. And the second part, or second stage, can start happening, which is going to be acetyl group formation. And this essentially is going to involve the process called glycolysis. Okay, so we're going to cut down that 6-carbon carbohydrate of glucose into 3-carbon compound called pyruvate, and then ultimately pyruvate is going to be converted into a 2-carbon acetyl group. The next main phase happens in the mitochondria, particularly in the matrix of the mitochondria. This is called the citric acid cycle. And this is where we're going to be making lots of NADH and FADH2. These are the electron carriers that will be made inside the matrix of the mitochondria. And then lastly, those electron carriers are then going to go to this thing I've abbreviated as ETC, that stands for the electron transport chain. That occurs in the outer membrane, or I'm sorry, the inner membrane of the mitochondria. And then the gradient that is formed here, a proton gradient that's formed during electron transport, is going to help drive what's called oxidative phosphorylation, where we're going to make ATP. So the bottom line of this process is you make lots of ATP, and ATP is sort of the energy currency of the cell. So by digesting, making acetate groups, citric acid, and this electron transport train, we can now make lots of ATP for our cells. So this is a downhill process. Remember, catabolic processes are a downhill energetic process. So these make energy. Okay, they do not require an energy input. As we'll see in later parts of the class, when we get into the reverse of catabolism, anabolism, we would have to start with small biomolecules and convert them in an uphill direction to larger biomolecules. One final thing I should say here is that one of the final products of oxidative phosphorylation is CO2. So carbon dioxide is going to then be released as part of the metabolic process. All right, so that kind of covers the real basics of an intro to metabolism. We'll get into some of the details of these processes in separate videos. Good luck.